And where it becomes that negative stress is when we start to feel like we're not ourselves, when we start to have these running, racing thoughts, when
Mm,
we are not thinking clearly, when we are
mm,
experiencing pain,
mm,
physical pain, all sorts of symptoms out there that can be connected to stress, emotional pain, the depressions, the anxieties. If we find ourselves going to the quick fixes that make us feel good in the moment, and there's so many out there. I'll just name a few. Like maybe it is going, and there's no judgments here because it happens. If we're not mastering these nervous systems, it happens. But like sometimes we will choose that drink. Sometimes we will choose that cigarette. Sometimes we will choose the drug of choice just to help us feel good in that moment.
mm.
Because again, we're not taught how to do a lot of this.
Hi guys, welcome back to Neff Inspiration, a show on YouTube and as a podcast with me, your host, Stefan Neff. Today I've got Andrew O'Brien with me. Andrew is a man who, like me, has learned how to burn the candle on both ends and in the middle. And you can do that for a little while, and that is a very society approved way of being a go-getter, being a man going out there. But it's also a surefire way of burning out. So today we want to talk about the negative stress, what stress really is, how it can lead to burnout, and what we can do to mitigate that risk, how we can actually harness stress in a good thing, because stress is something positive as well. And sometimes to draw that line can be really difficult. So who better to talk to than Andrew O'Brien, a burnout and stress coach. Andrew, thank you very much for being here. Welcome to my show.
You are so welcome, Stefan, and it's a pleasure to be here. And thank
Uh,
you for allowing us to kind of like talk about this stuff and spread this word because it's just, as you know, super
hmm.
important.
Ah, and if you look at statistics, the rates of burnouts in society is actually huge. But when we say burnout, it's nearly a little bit of a cliche. It's nearly something that is maybe overrepresented, you could say. What is burnout? How do you define it?
How I define it. So really it's all in the science and that science is when we are burned out. When I say the word burnout, what I am talking about if our stress response system is engaged or activated for long periods of time, and we're talking about days, weeks, months, if
Years?
if years, yeah. So if our stress response does not have an opportunity to go back to that homeostasis state, which that's how we were designed, that is what I call burnout.
You have just described many lives of people around me. Yet, some of them seem to function very highly, and some of them seem to be absolutely fine. So, why do some people at some stage collapse and some other people just keep going, like automatons, like the proverbial Energizer bunny? Um, what makes the battery run out?
Yeah. So what makes the battery run out, Stefan, is if we are not, I call it mastering. If we're not mastering this stress of ours,
Hmm.
we are going to get to that stage. And when we get to that burnout stage, as you know, that's not sustainable. We morph into all sorts of physical, emotional, behavioral stress symptoms that for our long-term health and longevity, no bueno. And so I call it mastering that stress. And the people who excel at this know that we're born with these systems. We are born with our stress response systems, and we want them. We want these stress symptoms to be with us because this is what protects us. It's kind of like a survival mechanism.
Absolutely.
At the end of the day, we're walking nervous systems, and these nervous systems are there to protect us and to support us. And they're designed to face like real danger, real threats in our lives, real danger. And these nervous systems tell us what to do in 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 milliseconds of like, do we fight? Do we freeze? Do we run? Do we do any sort of reaction that our nervous system is telling us to do? That is, it's intended. That's the purpose of them.
Exactly.
And in those moments when we are like if we are in the face of a real danger, I'm actually going to use an example just maybe a couple, maybe no, it's actually, I would say a few months ago. It was the summertime back here in New York. That's where I'm based out of. I walk across Central Park like twice a day. And in the morning, I walk across that park. And that there's like a period of time where dogs are allowed to, run around unleashed, which is the cutest thing ever. But this particular morning, I was walking across that park, and this dog like charged me out of nowhere. It's the first time this has ever happened, and my nervous system engaged. I felt it engaged because I'm like super in tune and aware of what's happening within me, and I kind of like felt it. I felt my nervous system reacting to this threat that was coming my way. It was barking. I saw those teeth. And so what did my body do? I didn't consciously do it, but my nervous system told me to, I kind of like went like that and shifted my body to put my rear in that dog's face. Because if that dog was going to bite me, I would want that dog to bite my rear as opposed to like this part of me. And again, this was not conscious decisions that I was making. This was just an automatic response. It's a protective mechanism because this is the most vulnerable part of us. And our nervous systems know that innately. And so that's what I did. And thankfully, the owner kind of rescued the day and got the dog. I was not bit. Uh, but in that moment, what's also happening is that the cells in our body, when we experience situations like that, are the cells in our body that are doing their normal functions, they're actually getting diverted temporarily to support that stress response system. And so um, that's really key here. That's really important because if I were to get into that stress state and stay there, the cells that are diverted from other parts of our body to support that stress system, they're not getting that chance to get back to doing their actual regular jobs.
Mm.
And when that happens, that's when these negative health outcomes can start to happen. So if I didn't regulate myself, if I didn't kind of get through that danger, and if I stayed there, if I allowed myself to stay there, that's what would have happened with me. And that's what happens so often. Like we are bombarded with information this day and age. Most of it's negative, and that's all contributing to our stress system being triggered and activated for long periods of time as well. So, um, long story, but I hope that answered that.
No, absolutely. And I love it the way you describe it there, because out of your story, we can learn a lot of things. A, the power that these innate survival mechanisms have. The only reason that we as humans have evolved to this degree is because of such really powerful systems that are deeply, deeply ingrained. You can't change them, and you should not change them, because the reality is your response to a threat is so paramount. If you're
Mm,
just relaxed and then get mauled by a beast, well, that's the end of you. So let's be clear about it. These things always come with a benefit to the individuals and to humans in general.
mhm,
However, you have already alluded to the problem that we have many such triggers throughout the day that really keep our levels of this sympathetic nervous system artificially high. And we are not actively pursuing activities or states where we bring the opposite into the game, the parasympathetic nervous system, the rest and digest, the healing kind of power of our body. That's one thing. The other thing is that you respond. In this moment, you turned your back to it and
mhm,
therefore made yourself potentially a victim because there's nothing you could defend. You can change those things. So only because there is something in that moment coming to you, you didn't know better. In the future, you might actually walk with a stick in your hand just because you can.
Mhm.
Or you might have a knife in your pocket. I'm not sure if that is legal in New York, but it is sort of maybe a pocket knife or something that easily opens. And you might train yourself to have a different response to that particular risk or
Mhm.
that state, what happens there to you. And that, of course, is something that soldiers practice, the fear inoculation, us getting used to that. And the moment you're used to it, you're able to manage it in a better way. But
Yep.
most of us are not doing this kind of work. Most of us are neither training ourselves to deal with emergencies. We rather try to escape our reality, isn't it? We try to run
Mm.
away. Wow.
Yep.
Okay. So in other words, we have figured out that fight and flight and fawn and all these coping mechanisms and adaptive mechanisms are really, really good. But what happens when they're now switched on for weeks and months?
Yeah, and here's the thing. Like so when I say nervous system, I'm also talking about the like the brain. And one of the parts of this brain is that amygdala. That amygdala is connected to that fear response center, which is basically running the charge here when it comes to facing these threats. The thing about the amygdala is that it does not know the difference between a real and a perceived threat. And so in the moment of that my dog story, like that was a real threat. I had a dog like that was charging me.
Mm,
But so often we are, and I alluded to this just a bit ago, uh, we are caught up in dealing with these not real threats, these perceived threats, and that's triggering the same stress response system.
mm,
And so, if we're not actively managing this, I actually say mastering it. If we're not actually actively mastering
yeah.
what's real, what's not, we will likely get into a space of that chronic stress, that burnout.
Mm,
Um, because as I mentioned, the cells that are supporting that stress response system, they're being diverted from their regular roles. Like
mm,
whatever the case may be in like digestion,
mm.
I'll just use digestion for an example. Like that gets disrupted.
Mm.
And
Yep.
that's why it's just so key for us to be able to master all of this
Mm,
and leverage it, optimize it. We want it, but we also want to
mm,
master it because the whole goal is to kind of get into that flow state, um, to go in and out
mm.
of the stress and
Mm.
homeostasis.
And as a functional medicine practitioner, I can see that quite easily, and I often see that when I do hormone testing on people. There's a phenomenon that is called cortisol steal. Cortisol is the hormone that is then ejected from the adrenal glands for more prolonged stress rather than the microseconds and seconds of this adrenaline and noradrenaline response. When you come chronic stress, then cortisol is there. But cortisol takes a lot to actually make and build, etc. And so other hormones suddenly take a dip. And in men, one of the hormones that goes down is the androgen, is the testosterone. So here we are, men who are coming to their GP and say, "Oh, my testosterone is low," which is not great for your sexual function, but more importantly, it's not great for your life because there is actually it has a lot of beneficial effects on other parts of the body. So testosterone is low. So the answer is not here's a testosterone pill or injection or whatever, but rather, hey, hang on, why is your testosterone low? Let's have a look at your life. Let's have a look at your stress. And here you are. So we can see that, we can measure that. And it is really, really good that we highlight that because the stress has such a huge impact. And when I use the word stress, I mean with that negative stress. It is,
Mhm.
we need to distinguish. Do you distinguish positive and negative stress in your work?
I do. Uh, I consider it negative when we are in that burnout phase. And like there is really good stress out there.
mm,
That stress can motivate us. That stress
mm,
can push us forward. That stress can help us get over our fears. That stress can do so many good
mm,
things for us.
mm,
And yeah, there's a big distinction there as far as I'm
mm,
concerned. And where it becomes that negative stress is when we start to feel like we're not ourselves, when we start
mm,
to have these running, racing thoughts, when
mm,
we are not thinking clearly, when we are
mm,
experiencing pain,
mm,
physical pain,
mm,
all sorts of symptoms out there that can be connected to stress,
mm,
emotional pain, the depressions, the anxieties. If we find ourselves going to the quick fixes that make us feel good in the moment, and there's so many out there. I'll just name a few. Like maybe it is going, and there's no judgments here because it happens. If we're not mastering these nervous systems, it happens. But like sometimes we will choose that drink. Sometimes we will choose that cigarette. Sometimes we will choose the drug of choice just to help us feel good in that moment.
mm,
Because again, we're not taught how to do a lot of this,
mm.
or I can speak to my country. I'm not sure what it's like in your country, but in my country, in my education system, we were not taught how to do this. And that is, I think, one of the
Mm,
reasons why so many of us are struggling and challenged by this.
mm. 100% correct. And it's multifactorial, isn't it? Because stress for you as a human being starts with your basic human needs. That means sleep for restoration. That means safety above you, no bombs raining down. The sheer fact that you're maybe living in a relatively safe environment, maybe a house, an apartment, you've got shelter, that your food is there, that you have got hydration, that you're there. Because let's just simply say you're only living on alcohol and coffee. Well,
Mm,
you're essentially chronically dehydrated. Now, that is a stress on your body. That's not
yeah.
something that is easily well, the symptom of thirst often disappears by the age of 30, or the older we get, the less we sense thirst. But our body senses it. Our body actually says, "My God, if we don't drink anything, I'm gonna be dead in 24 hours." So this is a
Mm,
stress that often is sort of underlying that we don't even know. You're sleeping. Oh, I only need to sleep 4 hours. Yeah, about that. That so again, we have got underlying stress on the body. So we actually swim in the soup of stress before we have
mm,
even opened an email, before we have even opened the curtains and saw what is on in the world. So I think there are so many factors that are actually contributing to that, and therefore
yeah.
also factors that we can actually deal something about.
Yeah.
How can we detect that too much is too much? In other words, un how can we not keep going until we literally crash and burn? But actually, are there early warning symptoms that you utilize to show your clients, hey, actually, alarm here, be aware?
Yes. And it it's really going back to like if you see that you are off in any sort of way, if you are different from your usual way of being,
Hmm, hmm,
uh, if you're starting to experience these symptoms, that those are the signals. The signals are exactly that. And there's a slew of them out there, and it's going to be different for everybody.
hmm,
Uh, you know, a signal for somebody could be a stress headache. A signal for
hmm,
somebody could be a um, a bout with diarrhea.
hmm,
Um, a signal to somebody could be like if you are naturally kind of reserved with your emotions and you snap and you become irritable, like that is a sign that something is off here, and it's time to kind of check in with how am I
hmm.
handling whatever I'm going through right now, and can I do it more effectively?
for doctors or for healthcare professionals is often the lack of empathy. The, someone says, "Oh, you know what is happening in my life," and you actually want to say, "Oh, shut up! I tell you what is wrong. I tell you what is going on in my life." Yeah,
Mm,
warning sign. And yeah, that's a very good point. You often enough sense it if you stay still long enough and listen to our
yeah,
body, but we often feel that we can't stay still. We often feel
yeah.
that we have to keep going because it
Like
is.
if you're, yeah. Sorry, totally interrupted. But yeah, like if you're just like find yourself exhausted, if you're like on caught on this like hamster wheel and you
Hmm.
just don't know how to get out of it and it's not going anywhere you want it to go. Like the yeah, the I could go on for a long time
And it's
about
it's so true. And it's that's so hard because there is such a huge variety of symptoms and of ways of flow-on effects of chronic stress on a body. So both in the physical signs and symptoms, as well as in our emotional behavior, and long term in our health span and our lifespan.
hmm
Stress does cut years of our body, of our lifespan. And that is actually quite a strange and frightening thing in its own right, isn't it? So even more stress here. Oh my God. In
Yeah.
reality, I see it as these discussions that we have here, honest, raw discussions about behaviors and coping mechanisms that maybe don't suit us so well.
Mm,
They are not here to scare you guys out there. They're here to inform you and tell you, hey, is it not time to look again at your life and see and maybe rephrase things, learn more about your emotional intelligence? Because here we are getting shitloads of feedback from our body. And this feedback is called emotions. Yet, most of us don't even know much about what is depression, how does it feel for me, what
yeah.
is anxiety, how does it feel for me, etc. Is that something that we need to learn first?
We I believe we need to learn all of the science. And and it's not a lot. Like honestly, it's not a lot. I say all the science. Because within each domain of these 10 categories that I've streamlined anyway, I've summarized like how we can master the stress is through these ten domains. There is a lot of science in each of these domains, but when you know the basics
Hmm,
of each of these domains, it's really not a lot. And at the end of the day, it's all about optimizing
hmm.
the science to incorporate into your life.
Well, take me as a guinea pig, and let's go through these 10 domains and see where how I score and what I can do maybe to optimize my life in those domains. Knowing that in the last 10 years I've grown a lot. So I could be forgiven to think, okay, after 10 years, you got your shit together, haven't you? Chances are I haven't, because there's every single day I learn new things. So come on, yeah, take me apart. Let's do it.
I will not take you apart, but I will for certainly share these 10 and we did touch up on a couple of them already, which excites me. But yeah, so the first one, and I also want to say that there's no priority here.
Mm,
There's no like in the order that we go does not mean that one is more important than the other. It's just
mm,
like it's again that holistic approach and optimizing all of these 10. But for the first category is really getting back to the basics, and that is that breath,
mm,
that oxygen, that those deep, consistent breaths. I'm going to say it again, that word breath. And we lose sight of this so often. I guarantee you, myself included, we do that shallow breathing so much throughout our day.
mm,
And this deep breath work might be the quickest way to signal to our nervous systems to get back to that homeostasis. And there are so many different breathing methods out there. I encourage you to take a look at
mm,
do a Google search and see There's a box breathing method, the 478 method. There's a soft belly breathing method.
Mm,
The really important thing about these 10 buckets of science that I'll highlight here, they are applicable to all of us as humans with brains and nervous systems, but how we apply them into our lives is going to be super different and super
mm,
individualized.
mm, mm,
Um, and so it's not prescriptive in that way, but it's just bringing forward to light what this science is. And so that
mm,
first bucket is all about that breath work. Did you know, you probably know, that our brains actually use approximately 20% of our body's total oxygen supply.
mm,
So even that mild deprivation can
mm,
lead to that burnout train if we're not incorporating those deep breaths into our day. And so that's the first category.
mm. And it's so easy because when we talk about diaphragmatic breathing, vagal tone breathing, we're actually taking deep tummy breaths. And that is quite important because the vagal nerve, part of the parasympathetic, the opposite to the fight and flight nervous system, is running through the center of our chest and through the diaphragm. So we are basically stretching that nerve and we are massaging that nerve with every deep breath we are taking. Now you can immediately change your tone, your state in your body by doing so. And you can train that system. When we started this show, just prior to that, I did every time I do 10 seconds pause, close my eyes, I do one deep vagal tone breath, and I've trained my system to be able to achieve a different state within one breath. That's something
Mhm.
that is trainable just as much as you can train a muscle to lift a certain weight in a certain fashion. This is all easy stuff once you know how to train it. So I
Mhm.
so 100% agree with you. Breath
Yep.
work, 100%.
And I noticed you did that during that pause, like in the beginning of this show, and I was like, yeah, Stefan,
That's
he's
right.
got it. He's got the breath down.
So breath
Uh,
easy, but we so often overlook it. Love it.
yeah,
Number two,
yeah.
domain two.
Domain two is all about, as you're literally doing it, hydrating.
Hydrate.
So,
Although I'm having coffee here, so it is 8
okay,
o'clock in the morning for me. So that's cool.
got it. I was gonna say I don't know what's in there, but yeah, water, the hydration is all about this bucket number two. The brain, going back to that brain,
Mm,
it's approximately 80% water, folks. And
mm,
so uh, even that mild deprivation again can stress these nervous systems and lead us to that burnout. And so I
mm,
encourage you to think about what your water intake is
mm,
in a day.
mm,
And I know you're in a different country. When I work with my clients here and when I speak about this stuff to organizations here, I always refer to the CDC because they put out different guidelines and standards
mm,
for us. And so I'll refer to the CDC, but I encourage you to think to refer to the equivalent in your countries if you're in a different country. But that CDC currently does not have standard guidance for water intake for us. And the reason for that is because we're all different shapes and sizes. We're in different parts of the country, different climates, temperatures,
mm,
different levels of physical activity. We're not sweating at all the same race. There's a lot of variables that
mm.
go into that. So
Absolutely.
I don't believe that they're ever going to be able to come up with that standard. But I did check in with a couple of registered dietitians throughout my career who did not know each other, and both of them recommend that their patients work to maintain a pale yellow urine color throughout the day.
Exactly.
And if they can achieve that, then they are likely well hydrated. And so that's the advice that I could share today.
Exactly. 100% agreed, shared as well. That is probably the best indicator because it's personalized to you and
Hmm.
takes into account all those variables. So well done, absolutely. And we are all guilty as charged. The older we get, because we are not paying attention to that, we are not getting the feedback because your first the intensity of first disappears, and often enough it masks as hunger. So you think, oh, I'm
Yeah.
hungry again. Why is that? When in reality, you're confused. It's really first. So there's something
Mm.
to be said is when you want to reach for a snack, then maybe have a glass of water to start off with. and then regroup in 10 minutes or so. That water will be gone out of your stomach in 20 minutes. So that is actually then you have done something to rehydrate a little bit.
And once you get into it, like once you get into a routine of hydrating and then you stop that, you will feel a difference. You're going to feel like more sluggish and you're going to feel
Yeah,
uh, something is wrong here. And then you're like, oh yeah, that's right. I didn't drink the water that I usually drink. And so yeah,
touche.
that's all about number two, domain number two. Um, domain number three is all about enhancing, optimizing our nutrition.
Mm,
And this is a very complicated and complex category. And I'm not here to kind of say that any one diet food regime is the right one
mm,
because there is no right one.
mm,
It's very common. Like registered dietitians don't all agree on the same one, and it seems like every 2 weeks that there's a new thing coming out
mm,
there. Um, but I am going to highlight a couple things for you with our nutrition. The first fact that I want to share your way, and I'm always blown away by this, about 90% of our serotonin, which is one of our feel-good hormones, about 95% of that is actually manufactured, produced in the gut. And when we are not giving the gut the food that it craves, that
mm,
serotonin does not have that opportunity to be manufactured in the way that it wants. In addition to that, the gut, we mentioned the vagal nerve just a bit ago, that the gut and the brain are very, very, very intimately connected with that vagus nerve and constantly sending signals back and forth. And so if that serotonin is suppressed, that's going to get out. That's going to get out to the brain. Um, and and so this is a big one, folks. This nutrition is a big area. And so you might be now asking, like, so if there's no right diet, what should I be optimizing? And that again, I'll share from the CDC perspective here in the United States. What we want to be optimizing are the vegetables or the fruits. We want the fibers, we want the
mm,
lean proteins, we want the healthy fats, those omega-3s. We
mm,
want the whole grains. We want these natural whole foods is what our bodies crave. And what we want to limit or avoid, one of these things is my least favorite thing to talk about when I talk about this stuff. It's all about those added sugars, the refined sugars. It's like it's fake. It's
mm,
fake food. And it's not good for us long term. If treats are okay, 100%, but like if this is our constant go-to, it's not sustainable, and it's going to definitely make an impact. So the heavily processed foods, the
mm,
added sugars, the added salts, uh, the alcohol also, we want to be limiting or avoiding
mm.
those categories according to the CDC. And yeah, so this nutrition is can make a really big impact for folks when they make shifts to in that direction.
Hugely so, hugely. And food is medicine. We need to
Mm,
highlight that. Absolutely. I can create a diet for you that will make you depressed and have anxiety attacks. It's not difficult to do. Many do it naturally with I was about to say the shit that they are eating. I think there is so much ultra processed food out there where there are many additives in there, including sugar and salt, that are hidden. And therefore, it makes it so hard for us to distinguish that. But I think a good rule is anything that has more than 5 ingredients, you should probably think, is that really something you want to buy? Anything that your grandmother would have not recognized is
mm,
probably not a bad starting point. So there are some very simple, basic rules that you can do. And again, it becomes like a game. When you learn new rules for a game, you suddenly look at the game in a very different way. It's far more likely that you win in that game. And the nice thing is this game comes in many little installments. So every single moment you can make choices.
yeah.
And these choices, they are a privilege. You've got a privilege of choice. You can eat shit and then wonder why your blood sugar first goes high and then crashes. And that might give you an anxiety attack. Or you might actually make a different choice and your blood sugar is nice and stable and you actually feel
Mm,
good. And you think, huh, now that's different. So
yeah.
great. We got actually, this is not something to be worrying about. This is something to jubilate, to, what is the word? To celebrate because we can do something about it. And it's very
Yes.
easy.
Yes, there's solutions. There are
Mhm.
solutions. That's the beautiful part about it. 100%.
Isn't it? Oh,
Yeah.
beautiful. Keep going. Domain free tick. Nutrition. Huge, huge, huge.
Yeah, it
Domain
is huge.
four. Do, 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 do.
Domain four is all about physical activity.
Yep.
And this is an ideal like domain that this is going to be very personal for people across the board here. There's not one way to be
Mm,
physically active, but just a little bit of the science first. Like when we do, we're human, we're born to move, and when we do move, we're actually increasing the oxygen flow, we're increasing the blood flow to our brains. It actually enhances our learning and memory as well. Not so connected to stress, but that's another side benefit when we
mm,
um, do some sort of physical activity. Uh, and from the CDC perspective, again, I encourage you, whatever country you're from, go to the equivalent of the CDC. I'm gonna highlight the CDC's recommendations, and I'm gonna pinpoint healthy adults. And the way they define adult is between 18 and 65. There are other populations out there at the CDC's website. I encourage you to explore that if you are not in that healthy adult population. But from this population, what we need to be doing is at least 150 minutes of moderate, like cardio related activity across the week. And that could be broken up no matter how you want to break it up. Or if it's more vigorous activity, at least 75 minutes broken up across that week. In addition to that, a couple of days of more of that muscle resistance training to get at that strengthening work. That's the guidance that's coming out of the
mm,
CDC. And there's so many different ways that we can be active and some things we don't even think about. Cleaning counts, house
mm.
cleaning counts, gardening counts, walking counts. Um, and of course, the more vigorous related activities like the running or boxing. Like these are all things that are considered physical activities. So I invite you to think about what it is that you resonate with. What what could you find joyful in movement
Mm.
and then make it happen?
I love it that you say activity and not exercise, because exercise, we sort of think about putting some special clothes on, going to a special place, doing special things, when in reality, activity just means that you're more active in your daily life. Regrettably, there are many people in the United States, for example, that are averaging maybe 2,000 steps a day. A society that is really focused on car and focused on drive-throughs, etc. Convenience. Now, you can easily add another 2,000 steps in by maybe parking your car a bit further from the entrance of your workplace or parking your car when you go shopping a bit further away. Suddenly you've added 100 meters there, 100 meters back. Well, by the time you have blinked, you've doubled those steps. Now, I think maybe a nice step goal might be 10,000 steps a day, or at least 6,000 steps a day. This would be something where you can, with a simple thing, many watches nowadays have got intelligent functions there. It's something easy that you can look at and put it even directly onto the face of your watch that you see,
Mhm.
where am I at? And I think that can be a very, very powerful incentive. So it doesn't take much.
Yeah.
There's so many beautiful activities out there. Figure out what creates joy. What
Dance.
brings joy? Dancing. Um, little things. I mean, you put the kettle on to boil and wait for the water to get hot. During that time, you can do 10 push-ups and or leaning push-ups on the desk on a counter. You can do some squats 10 squats. That's more than you would have done. So it's
Hmm.
actually very easy. So you say, I don't have time for exercise. Oh, no, you have. You just make different priorities. So I love
Hmm.
it. I love it what you're pointing out. Domain 4, 100% tick.
Beautiful. All right, and then and moving on, pun intended there. Moving on to number five, domain number five, and this is all about sleep.
Oh,
You mentioned sleep a bit ago during this episode, but sleep is also paramount
mm,
for us. And another did you know moment, like one of the many benefits that happens within our bodies when we are in that deep sleep, and that deep sleep is happens few times throughout our overall sleep cycle. If we're getting that consistent regular sleep, which is the goal, that deep sleep happens a few different times throughout the course of that night of sleep. And in those moments of deep sleep, one of the things that's actually happening is the brain's waste management system kicks into high gear. That is called the glymphatic system. That glymphatic system does
mm,
its thing during that part of sleep. And so what does that waste management system mean? It means like all of the dead neurotransmitters that are accumulated into our brains throughout the course of living in a day, which is very
mm,
normal. That glymphatic system flushes all of that out of the brain into our bodies and out of our
mm,
bodies through during that deep part of the sleep. So if we are not achieving that, it's no wonder why we wake up feeling groggy. It's no wonder why we feel up like wake up like wanting to hit the snooze button like 50,000 times and just
mm,
feel low
mm,
energy because like
mm.
biologically that's what's happening within our brain. We do
Mm,
feel flooded with these dead neurotransmitters. And so this sleep is super paramount. From the
absolutely.
CDC perspective, they do recommend that we get at least 7 hours of
Mm, mm,
consistent regular sleep in a day. And some of their recommendations to optimize our sleep hygiene is to uh, check your sleep environment. Is it dark? Is it quiet? Is it they say cool, but I say know yourself, know your temperature,
mm,
know your body temperature. The whole point is that you don't want to be waking up either like too cold or like in
mm,
a sweat.
mm,
And so to regulate that as best as you can, I
mm,
actually run cold. So that word cool puts me off. I actually prefer to be a little bit warm
mm,
in when I'm sleeping and I like never wake up. It's awesome. But yeah, so those are some things. The technology, like the smartphones, the iPads, like limit the hell out of that. I know
mm,
that's so hard to do. So
mm,
many of us get caught up in like those scrolls on social media, uh, or even doing emails or catching up on work or whatever the case may be. But that blue light technology in those
mm,
in those iPads in the smartphones when we're holding them close to our
mm,
face, that's actually telling the brain to stay awake.
mm,
And so
mm,
if like it could be tough for you to go to sleep after you turn that off for a bit of time, and that's ultimately going to impact the
mm,
duration
mm,
sleep that you're able to get. Um, if you have racing thoughts, if you have a racing mind, and that seems to be keeping you up, what I
mm,
recommend is possibly doing like a data dump. Let it all out, like write it all out on a pad.
mm,
Um, Sometimes things come up in my mind when I'm drifting off to sleep, and I was like, oh wait, I have to do this tomorrow. I have to do this tomorrow. I have to do this tomorrow. I'm just like, all right, let me just email myself that real quick, or just jot it down on a note so it's out of my brain onto the piece of paper wherever it is, and that kind of like gives me that space to like, all
mm.
right, good, it'll be there tomorrow. I'm good.
Love it.
Um, a couple more things about optimizing the sleep cycle is we don't want to be eating heavy meals close to that sleep time. I would say at least an hour out because your body needs time to digest
Mm,
and your sleep is not going to be as rejuvenating, as
mm,
beneficial if you're eating heavy meals like right up until you're going to sleep.
mm,
And then the second thing, we literally just talked about physical movement. We don't want to be doing more of the vigorous types of movement
mm,
again, so close to when we want to go to sleep because our body needs time to unwind and
mm,
and
mm,
reset after that vigorous workouts. If that's the only time of day that you have in to move, what I would recommend is more of the stretches, the stretch type work,
absolutely.
and do that kind of movement as
Mm,
opposed to more of the
mm,
vigorous kind.
mm. And you can combine that depending upon your your spirituality, your faith, your those kind of things. You can combine that, for example, with a yoga session or with a stretching session that is focused on release of trauma in your body. Doing such stretches, they're often linked with breath work. They're often you learn how to actually take deep diaphragmatic breathing as you're stretching, and it actually all works together. You're actually releasing symptoms and you're releasing some of the tension, some of the anxiety, which is incredibly powerful. So I don't do it often enough, I have to admit, but there have been recently incredibly stressful times in my life, and I actually made a point of doing some stretches, doing some breath work at night, and I slept like a baby. And it was just
Mm.
so beautiful to have that immediate feedback to actually say, wow, I slept really good last night. Why? Well, ta-da. Okay, no, I love it. I love it. You're so right there.
hmm and you just said something that I think it's important to say, like there is no state of perfection here.
Mm,
This work is all about a state of optimization. And as long as we're optimizing these 10, you're gonna see this life without burnout. And when you're not in a life of burnout, you're gonna see
mm.
more of that clarity, more of that purpose, more of that drive, more of that energy, more of that health and longevity. And that's what it's all about.
Love it.
So these, yeah, so these first five, that's what I call like getting back to the basics. The second five, I find more people are generally unaware about, and I like to kind of bring that to the surface. And
Yeah,
so category number six is we just talked about sleep. Six is actually about rest, and these
nice,
are two
nice,
completely different things.
nice.
Rest, when I say rest, I'm talking about brain rest, and our brains actually, based on the latest science, fatigue after about 90 minutes of focused activity on a task.
Mm,
Average,
mm,
right? So that could be sooner than 90 minutes. It could be longer than 90 minutes,
mm,
depending on the nature of the task. But approximately every 90 minutes, our brains are asking for a break without literally telling us because like our brains are not muscles that signal to the brain in real time, I'm tired. Please take a break. Like just, if you're a runner, like your leg muscles are going to tell you that you're tired, tell your brain that you're tired, and the brain will then say, okay, let's take a break. The brain doesn't do that to itself because the brain
yeah.
is an organ. But thankfully, we have this research and this science, and we now know on average 90 minutes, the brain does start to fatigue. So what I recommend um, in as a realistic way as possible, because I also understand that folks are in professions where they literally can't stop what they're doing um, to take a break. And one example of that is like in an OR. If you're operating on someone and the operation is scheduled for 3 hours, like that's 3 hours of straight, and that's intense,
Mm,
like an intense
mm,
task. So guaranteed your brain's going to be exhausted after that. So maybe in that case, it's after the 3 hours, you then incorporate some sort
mm,
of break for your brain.
mm,
That's why I say the word realistic, because you got to see what works best for you and your
mm,
schedule and all that kind of stuff.
mm,
But when I say
mm,
break, I'm talking about ideally you want to do something uplifting.
mm,
And so maybe it's like looking at your camera reel to see like pictures that you have in there that bring smiles to your face. Look at a loved one, or maybe it's listening to a song that you love. Just something to get your brain out of what it had been doing and focus on something else that is uplifting and that's the name of the game. And if we can sprinkle these throughout the course of the day, we're
mm.
going to be optimizing those brains in a way that actually shows, based on that latest research, that when we do this, we are ultimately more productive and more
Mm,
efficient and
mm,
effective with whatever it is that we are doing day to
mm.
day.
I
Yeah.
call them micro pauses and sprinkle them throughout the day. And they can be so powerful. And it doesn't need to be a 20-minute snooze somewhere. No, it is just a very conscious, now I'm giving myself a rest. You're talking about OR. This is actually not such an uncommon practice in more of the younger surgeons. I have worked with, when we did a longer spine surgery or something like that, that somewhere in the middle, suddenly the surgeon just stands back and the nurses just stand back and tell a joke or do something
Yeah.
silly like that. And it is actually just nice. There's this kind of really release of tension
Mhm.
immediately. And whilst no one has ever in my mind say, oh, let's do a micro pause now, it's still, in actual fact, that it has been an habit, a practice that people did and that these surgeons implemented. And it is beautiful. And we can do that in so many fashions, in so many things. We can structure them in. You can actually, if you know that you need to let's say review a book or do a long article that you know will take you most of the day to actually write or research, etc. I use a timer. Being
Hmm.
having trained as a stretch coach, as a yoga coach, we hold some certain positions 5 minutes or so. Now you keep losing track of time, so I often use these timers, but I also use them to say, okay, I will now focus on emails, or I will now focus on X for 20 minutes or 30 minutes. Set myself a timer. When the timer goes off, I'll take a break. Maybe drink a glass of water, do a stretch or something like that. It's actually,
Yeah.
once you implement it, it's no longer a big thing. If you have never implemented it, you think, wow, how the hell shall I do that? You will
Yeah.
find ways. Ask yourself how. How can I do that? And very quickly, your brain will come up with solutions.
Yeah. And you're on point. It's micro. Like we're not talking hours out of your day.
Mm,
Unless you have that kind of bandwidth,
mm,
go for it. But like, yeah, just minutes for these little micro
mm,
pauses.
mm.
Um, for
Love it.
sure. There's not a lot of time.
Cool. Yeah, no, and we are not used to that. On the contrary, this kind of
Yeah,
go-getter type A, always there. Yeah, burnout country. It,
exactly. You should call it the United States of Burnout, where I'm from. Uh,
love it.
so number seven is all about gratitude.
Yes. Yes.
And I'd like to share a little bit of science around this gratitude as it relates to the brain. And there's this is so powerful. And again, we're not talking hours out of the day, again, unless you have that kind of bandwidth, really just minutes a day. The research shows that we could see really positive things. And so what's happening in the brain? When we are in that burnout phase, when we're in that chronic, when that stress, earlier in this episode, we were talking about the stress system and when that is activated for long periods of time. What's also actually happening in the brain is that amygdala that we talked about earlier. That amygdala is kind of like an almond shape. And in times of high stress, in times of burnout, that amygdala actually expands in size. And what else is happening? There's a couple of other brain parts, the prefrontal cortex, which is connected to executive function, rationale, logic, some positive emotions are stored there. In addition to the hippocampus, it's a sliver part of the brain inside there that's also connected to
Mm,
learning, memory, positive emotions.
mm,
Those two brain parts actually shrink down in size when we are in that high stress and burnout phase. And so again, it goes back to that that
mm,
physiologically. It's no wonder why like we feel like nothing is possible because like the brain parts are not like working in our favor
mm,
uh, because of the way that they are expanding and shrinking.
mm,
This gratitude has a direct influence onto optimizing the size of those brain parts. And so
mm,
if you are in that burnout phase and you initiate a gratitude practice, highly likely you're going to start to see if you went in for these MRIs, because these MRIs, like it's amazing to see this stuff. that amygdala will shrink back down in size. And those two other brain parts I mentioned, they'll re-expand to their actual normal size.
mm,
And that, again, that's the really positive thing here. Again, pun intended with this gratitude category. But when we implement and incorporate a daily gratitude practice,
yeah.
at least a few minutes a day, we're going to start to see these positive benefits happening physiologically and then ultimately in our lives.
Mm,
And so you might be asking, like, what can I be grateful for? There are so many things to be grateful for. And just the some categories I'll throw out to you. Generally, people think about people, people who they love and trust in their life. And if that's you, keep doing it. Amazing. Animals can also be thrown in there. Your pets, the pets in your life, they can be thrown in there. The material things in your life can be thrown in there. The Maybe it's the bed that you get to sleep in. Maybe it's the running water that you have access to. Maybe it's the refrigerator that you have that keeps that produce fresh. Electricity,
mm,
the shelter. Like there's just so many material related things
mm,
that it's okay to be grateful for those.
mm,
Um, and the other things that I like to throw in there, like maybe it's going inside and being grateful for the heart that's beating for you, the
mm,
lungs that are breathing for you,
mm,
the GI system that's like doing all this digestive work for you, and
mm,
you and your personality and your skills and your strengths, because like you all have them
mm,
and you are unique and you have a unique gift to this world, and it's okay to be grateful for that. It's not selfish. It's okay to be grateful for who you are. And these are all different things that you can incorporate
mm,
into a gratitude practice. And if you like more of the guided stuff, there's so many free resources out there that
mm,
can offer guided meditations
mm,
and in specifically as it relates to gratitude. So I encourage you
mm.
to check that out.
And the first time you try it, be clear, you will feel like a dog. Because a really good practice is to not just do that quietly and just think about things that you're grateful, but now to actually speak out loud. I'm happy and grateful for or that. I'm happy and grateful that I'm sitting here and experiencing a wonderful conversation with Andrew. I'm happy and grateful that there is nothing, no bombs raining down on me, etc. And sometimes, especially when you're angry or when there are negative emotions trying to overwhelm you, and you're actually speaking those things out, it initially there is hesitation there. There's even a something that pushes back and says, "Oh, bullshit! You're not happy and grateful." If you just keep going for a minute, though, then suddenly something changes within you. I often felt that I can affect waves of negative emotions in a very powerful way by going through ongoing tirade of things I am grateful for. And after a
Mhm.
minute or two of that, it's hard for me to be really angry or sad or anxious.
Yeah.
It changes. It has a very powerful impact on me. Again, I might have practiced that once or twice, but it is, I think, the moment you get used to it, you jump over your own shadow of maybe feeling like an idiot when you do these things the first time. That's when the magic starts. That's when you start to become a different human, a better human, I believe.
Yeah. Another note that I want to make in case there's any questions about this coming up for folks is like, is there a right time of
Mm,
day
mm,
to do this? And they're really yes and no. And when I say yes, I mean if we're able to kind of do this kind of practice when we're experiencing more of that like theta brain frequency state, and that generally happens when we're kind of first coming out of sleep or drifting off to sleep. That's
mm,
generally when we're achieving that theta. Other people achieve it through, in the day too. But in that theta state, that's when our brains are most programmable. And
mm,
so I invite you to kind of see how you might incorporate that into those spaces or to one of those two spaces.
mm,
But I also say no because like as long as you're doing this at some point in the day,
mm,
it will have a benefit. And I generally recommend in the beginning of the day when we're first waking, before anything gets started, because in that regard, you're basically setting a foundation
mm,
for things. that you're grateful for.
mm,
And if things come your way that knock you off that foundation, at least you have that foundation to start with.
mm,
And so that's my personal recommendation,
mm.
but the overall answer is no. But also important to know the theta frequency is it could be a fun experiment to try to incorporate into that part of the day for you.
Beautiful. And again, this is something that we can train ourselves. This is not a huge amount of time. We're not saying hours. You are not a Tibetan monk who does not need to worry about where the money is coming from. No,
Yeah.
we are talking about a tiniest fraction of your day. If you say 1% of your day, if we ask you, could you actually invest 1% of your day into the new you? You would probably think, well, 1%, yeah, I can do that. That's 15 minutes, 1%. And if you now
Mhm.
break that open into maybe three sections of 5 minutes, so five in the morning of gratitude, five in the evening of stretching and breathing, and five in the middle to do a bit of something active, that doesn't sound too difficult, but you have made
Yeah,
three choices that will change your life in the long run. How cool is that? Gratitude, I love it.
cool to me.
Hmm?
It sounds cool to me.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Gratitude, such an empowering and such a beautiful, easy thing to do. Again, I love your domains because they are not difficult to think about and they give us the coat hangers on which we can add our activity throughout the day, which we can sort of tick off and think in a strategic, systematic fashion. Okay, what can I do to optimize my life in a most effective way? And
Yeah.
here we have got already, we came to domain eight. Seven or eight? I've lost count now.
Yeah,
But
I believe we're on 8 now because I
wonderful.
only have 3 more to share.
Oh, there you go.
Um, so 8 is and you mentioned this word just a bit ago, and I'm so glad that you did because this is so important. I can't underscore this enough. This is all about emotional expression,
Mm,
and this can be a very scary domain for someone
mm,
to start going down and exploring.
yeah.
Uh, I will say, so what do I mean by emotional expression? Generally, what happens, because again, we're not taught this stuff. In fact, we're probably taught the wrong thing to do growing up with our emotions. We're generally taught to like suck it up, move on, and just just man up. And that is not the right thing to do. The right
Right.
thing to do, and when that happens, like when if and when we do bottle up these emotions, and if we kind of keep pushing them down, over time, they're going to boil over.
Yeah.
They're going to boil over into this whole body of science out there, actually called the mind-body syndrome. And I encourage you to explore this further if this topic resonates with you. But when we suppress these emotions, they will boil up, and they will boil up into these physical stress symptoms, into these emotional stress symptoms, into those behavioral stress symptoms. Uh, and that could be very dangerous for us long term. And so the goal in this domain, whenever I talk about this stuff, I say the goal is to kind of create an emotional highway without traffic.
Mm,
And because there's always going to be something. There's always going to be a situation that triggers us, and that
mm,
and that creates an emotion. It creates a feeling, creates a mood. We can never be moodless as a human, by the way. We are emotional creatures. We're emotional beings, and this is so normal and healthy for us to experience.
mm,
These emotions are very, very normal and healthy, and we should be acknowledging them.
mm,
And then we should be releasing them in a healthy way. And I say healthy way because if we release them into the alcohol, into those added sugars, into the drugs, into XYZ, that long term is going to only exacerbate this whole burnout problem that we're experiencing. So creating that emotional highway, trigger, acknowledge what's happening emotionally, and then in as real time as possible, find a way to release that in a healthy way. And there's a
mm,
ton of different ways in which we can release these emotions in healthy ways. And just
mm,
in working with clients that I've worked with, I'll throw some recommendations out there that have worked for them.
mm,
One of them is writing it out.
mm,
Some people call it journaling. But writing it out, like use journal prompts that really get at the heart of the matter. No one's looking at the stuff. It's just you look at, be messy with it. Get out these emotions on that piece of paper. Some people write poems. Some people like write songs. Some people sing songs. Some people dance. Some people actually go into nature. A couple of my clients have done this and they're like, it's amazing. They go into nature and they use a tree to be the recipient of whatever is going on in themselves or the sun. They have conversations with these things in nature and they said that that's very helpful for them. There's so many different things that we can express ourselves in healthy and safe
Yeah.
ways because we certainly don't want to, act out on anybody. We don't want to act out on ourselves. Um, and yeah, this is such a power. I mean, all of these domains are really powerful, but I don't believe many people know the the risk that they're taking if they keep suppressing and bottling up these emotions. And yes, it can be very scary to confront. I don't like to say negative emotions because emotions are a part of us, but the ones that don't feel so good. So maybe it's the anger, maybe it's the shame. Uh,
If you
those
don't
are
want to,
not
if you don't want to call them negative, how do you call them?
I like the ones that are not so fun to experience. That's how I've really like talked about them.
Fair call.
Uh, yeah, and and it can be scary to confront that, especially if this is like years rooted. Uh, and so maybe you do want some professional support in that regard. Absolutely, go for it. I have
Mm,
many clients who also work with a therapist.
mm,
Uh, But it is just so important. We actually have neuropeptides running throughout our bodies. And what are those? These are the things that the brain is telling us how to feel. And this all gets like memorized
mm,
and stuff.
mm.
And so it's so important to kind of keep awareness to what we're actually feeling, release it in a healthy way and a safe way. So
Love it.
you can make room for that next trigger and the next emotion that's going to come your way because it's you can't avoid it. We're human.
Exactly. And I think one of those, I was laughing earlier on when you started talking about talking to a tree. I yesterday did, right now I'm living Papamoa Beach with a friend here, and he's 200 meters to the beach. So yesterday I went for a long walk on the beach and then did some meditation there. Or I intended to do some meditation, some quietness for my brain, and I actually ended up talking to the wind and there were
Hmm.
no people around me, so I didn't feel like an idiot and didn't get afraid. And it just things came out, and it was such a beautiful session, such a beautiful feeling, hearing the waves and being pounded by the wind there, and it was amazing. So
Mhm.
nature has a lot to give us. The power of nature is so good. And when we talk about talking to a tree or tree hugging or something like that, there is actually a whole science behind that that has to do with light that gets filtered in different ways. So we get more exposed to infrared frequencies and other frequencies out there that are actually beneficial for the body. There's
Yeah.
obviously the increased amount of activity there that you're actually going to a tree. So that is activity. Then you're breathing a healthier air than you're probably breathing within your environments that you normally are. So it's actually multifactorial input. And actually there's some clear measurable science there to say this
Yeah.
is a bloody good thing to do.
Yeah.
So don't don't feel stupid next time you talk to a tree. Actually say
Right.
hello to the tree, touch the tree. If you can, even take your shoes off if it's safe to do so. And actually
Hmm.
ground yourself. There's again some science behind that. So again, there are many things that you can incorporate with
Yep.
that and make that your own style. Make that your own way of living. Be the quirky new you and look at it
Hmm.
positively. This is a new you waiting to be discovered. I think we've got so many opportunities here to heal, to restore, to prevent disease, to increase our health span, our lifespan. It's all on a platter, guys. Here, it's waiting. I love it.
Absolutely. And I think that that's a really beautiful segue into the ninth category. Um, and and I think you'll find out in just a moment because that ninth category is all about connection.
Uh,
And this connection piece, I highlight three prongs under this connection umbrella. The first prong, I don't really spend too much time talking about because the first prong is all about connecting with other people.
mm,
Again, we are human, we're born to connect, we are social creatures, and we want to have those connections. We want those people who we love and trust in our lives. And so if that's an area of opportunity for you, I'll be vulnerable here. It's something that I've been working on to
mm,
increase more of in my life. So it's something that I focus on, but ironically, it's something that I don't really spend too much time talking about here because like connecting with other people is to me something that's more obvious than the other two prongs. But there's many ways in which you can work to enhance the connections that you
mm,
have with people who you love and
mm,
trust. So that's prong number one. Prong number two, the segue from the previous category, is all about connecting with your environment. And that environment, the way I define that is your physical surroundings. And that could be defined as your workplace, that could be defined as your home place, that could be defined as the where you live
mm,
geographically on this map. City, town, suburb, state, country.
mm,
Like, do you feel connected to it, to those different spaces? Do you feel
mm,
safe in those spaces? Do you feel like you
mm,
can let the hair down in those spaces? Do you feel like you can reset and recharge in those spaces? Uh, Really, really important to feel that. Like another quick personal story, I recently finished going through, actually, I'm not really quite done yet, but it's been like a year and a half going through a renovation in where I live in my apartment in the city. And that was disruptive. Like the height of the construction, like throughout the whole construction, when I was like I was living gratefully, mind you, with my parents at the time. But it disrupted my life and I
mm,
just didn't feel like I had my home space and that impacted me.
mm,
And there's for sure science around this connecting to that environment piece. So that's prong number two. And if you don't feel connected to these environments, what might you do differently to
mm,
feel more connected, feel more safe, zen, rechargeable? Prong number three is all about connecting to yourself. And what do
mm.
I mean by connecting to self?
I
So
like,
many different
I
things.
like.
One of the things that I highlight in this prong is do you know what you value in life? Do you know what's important to you?
Mm,
Um, are you taking actions? Are you making decisions in this life that are in alignment with that or out
mm,
of alignment with that? If it's out of alignment with that, burnout, 100%, not sustainable. If you're in alignment with that value system of what's important to you, I call it that North Star. If you know
mm,
what that North Star is and you're taking steps towards that North Star, you're going to be in that flow zone. And that's what it's all about.
mm,
The other thing that I'll share here in this connecting to self piece is like, do you know who you are? Do you know, and there's a whole ton of science behind personality type.
mm,
And specifically, I'm actually talking about Myers-Briggs, and the 16 personality type. Lots of science baked into this. Especially, I actually do a lot of work with these 16 types and the scientific ways that we can get ourselves out of that stress mode back into the best mode. And these types, do we know our type? Because
mm,
when we know our
mm,
type, we know our strong cognitive processes. We know what's most developed. We know what our go-tos are. We know where we excel. We know our strengths.
mm,
And
mm,
we'll also know our areas of opportunity and to kind of like build those out even more so that we can kind of get that more holistic picture of approaching life and getting out of these stressful situations with more ease and
mm,
effectiveness. So that's what I mean. Like, do you know who you are? What
mm,
is that personality type? What's important to you? And are you taking these decisions and making
mm.
taking these actions, making these decisions in alignment with all of that?
And that's really beautiful. I love that connection that you're splitting it up into these three subdomains. That makes a hell of a lot of sense as far as putting a system together. I had not thought about connection in such a more holistic way, and I love it. I absolutely love it. No, very
Yeah.
good. And we can again use each of these subdomains then to actually A, further ourselves, but B, also to immediately calm down things. If you look connect to the environment, you can do simple things to disrupt an anxiety attack, for example. There's a technique called 5 4 3 2 1. You actually focus on five things I think that you can touch. I can't remember now the exact sequence, but five things that you can touch, four things that you can hear, three things that you can see, something like that. And
Yeah.
it is immediately connecting with the environment, focusing therefore on the here and now. It's a very simple technique to actually do that, to ground yourself, so to speak, to connect yourself with the environment and in turn connect yourself right now with you. So it's interactive, and I love that. So there, love it. Connection, so important.
Yeah. And then the last we made it, people. The last category, category number 10, and I like to say this one for the last because it's all about having fun,
Yeah.
playing, laughing. When we laugh, literally, we're changing the hormonal balance in in our systems and we bring down that cortisol level. Cortisol, I know we used the word before, but cortisol is like one of the stress hormones.
Mm.
And so that cortisol level will drop when we are laughing. And those other feel good hormones like that serotonin we talked about before, that will
Mm.
increase uh, as well. And so this having fun and maybe you are on that burnout train right now. I have been there. It is not fun. And maybe you're telling me right now to F off. I cannot laugh. Like it would be impossible for me to laugh. I promise you. I promise you. Think about something in the past that made you laugh. Um, maybe it's putting on a sitcom. Maybe it's watching a stand-up show. Maybe it's like I'm not a
Absolutely.
huge fan of like needless scrolling through IG, but like um at times I think it could be very valuable because there are some really, really funny reels out there. And when you kind of like go down
Absolutely.
these trains of like I
Yeah.
found myself crying at one point, but like and my stomach hurt from laughing so hard watching the news bloopers that I just find those like the most hysterical. And like now my feed is all like these like the news bloopers and I crack up all the time. But yeah, so even if you're on that burnout train, it is so possible to even like one laugh,
Yeah.
maybe it's one laugh in the week. Give that gift to yourself.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I promise you, you'll get to the other end of this if you incorporate and optimize all of these ten domains.
And I think the last one can be the most challenging one because the
Mm,
darker your thoughts get, the more pressure is on you, the more challenges you face in your life, the more you're moving into that survival, into that fight or flight. And to actually now actively try to incorporate joy in your daily life, I
yeah,
found the most difficult.
yeah,
I For 30 years, I've been married and in a relationship. I identified myself as a provider, as someone who can work 16 hours a day, focuses on, being the man. And in reality, now I have to ask myself, who am I? Who am I apart from a provider? Who am I? So there are some very existential questions that at some stage in your life, they inevitably come up. And again,
yeah,
that can be a very stressful situation if you suddenly lose the purpose in your life because due to, let's say, injury, you can't be a welder anymore or a builder anymore or whatever your profession was with which you identified yourself. Suddenly, that was taken away from you.
yeah,
Suddenly, there is a divorce and you do no longer know, my goodness, okay, well, it just doesn't, life doesn't make sense anymore. And now you
yeah,
want joy? You want me to
right,
laugh? You're kidding.
yeah.
And that's so hard.
It's
But yeah,
hard.
but I love your the social media algorithms that
Yeah.
you're pointing to. That's exactly what I do. I look at stand-up comedy. I'm more a sarcastic humor kind of a dude who appreciates that. So therefore, I've got a lot of cynical and interesting things coming in my feeds. Feeds that again help me.
Yeah.
So social media is not all bad.
Yeah.
You can use it to your strength. I love
Yeah.
to be inspired. I love to be opened up to new ideas. So therefore, my feeds also will look at maybe some more controversial kind of things, but or just simply some humanistic, good, intrinsically good podcasts where we try to improve life, like this one here, where we actually
Mhm.
talk about the positive things. So we can choose what we listen to. And if something comes up on your algorithm, you just get rid of it.
Yeah.
Okay? If something you don't like, whilst something you do like, you hunt it down. Oh, I like that. Where does that come from? Ah, from that show. Brilliant. Let's look more at that show. And very soon your algorithms change and let them, because they hopefully will deliver you more stand-up comedy. They will deliver you more of inspirational quotes, affirmations, new ways to look positively at a challenge that you have, uh, things that allow you to rephrase trauma in your life to a positive opportunity. So there are so many positive things. I love that joy. That's the domain I need to work at. 100% agree. That is, my God. Thank you for putting the mirror in front of my face here.
Uh,
Oh
we're off to
wow.
a good start with these laughs right here. So there you go.
Well, there you go. A deep belly laughter that's actually honest and depreciating, self-depreciating humor is sometimes the best humor.
Yeah,
And you
indeed.
actually do admit, okay, you're a donkey. And I said it in the nicest way. I will do 100 affirmations to say I am a good man. I'm worthy because I'm worthy. So I will make up with the donkey. That's fine.
Nice. Nice.
Isn't it? Oh my goodness. Oh, Andrew, this was a beautiful, beautiful, very hands-on, very practical approach to burnout. We didn't focus much at all on the negative of burnout because many of us are experiencing it. We don't need to delve into that. But we actually explored so many, I mean, 10 domains and then some subdomains in which we can take action.
Yeah.
So there is a hope there. There's certainly help there. And that is so important because when we're in the middle of it, we don't see that there is hope. We think no one else feels as bad as you do. Often there's shame and guilt associated with no longer being that Coca-Cola sweet advertisement, healthy bouncing around. There's all this comparison with other people on social media. That's a negative side of social media. To look at all my friends are doing so well. Bullshit. Bullshit. That's their persona on Instagram and Facebook. Um,
Yeah.
what do you make out of the comparison syndrome um, and its impact on burnout?
I mean, that is a really real thing. That comparison. It's hard not to compare because you're looking at these things that are flashing on you like through the social media, and you're like, oh, I do it. I like, I'm running a business, and I look at other coaches and I'm like, wait, maybe I should be doing my stuff that way. But so it happens, and it's a very real thing. Without getting in too much detail, I know a lot of the younger people though that are really struggling and suffering with growing up in the high school years and the college years with
Mm,
all of this. I didn't have that growing up, like
mm,
thank God.
mm,
But like these people are having to cope
mm,
with all of the social media impact on their lives as they're trying to get through these really, you know, challenging years alone.
mm.
And they're seeing all of these like the best of the best coming through their feeds
Yeah,
and those algorithms,
yeah,
and
yeah,
it's so easy to compare, but to me it really all goes back to connecting with yourself,
uh,
that connecting um domain, because when
yeah.
you connect to yourself, you're going to be able to respect yourself, believe in yourself,
So
be
important.
your be your authentic self.
Yeah,
Uh and that's what it's all about. But yeah, it's a real thing. I'm not gonna say it's not a thing because
uh,
it's a thing. It
guilty
takes
as
work. All of
uh,
this takes work, right? Like
yeah,
constant work. I'm still doing
yeah,
it. I'm
yeah,
still working to optimize all of these domains,
sure.
and
Yeah,
I've been able to keep at bay my burnout for many years at this point because of it. But if I stopped doing the work,
yeah,
I would more than likely,
yeah,
I won't say 100%, more than
yeah,
likely head back to burnout
yeah,
because
yeah,
I'm not doing the things.
yeah. And I must say, it's the same with me. Whilst I've gone through tremendous challenges, tremendous new traumas, I've actually not experienced a burnout for at least 10 years. And it's actually quite nice to reflect on that, that I
Mhm.
actually have to say, wow, okay, in the past you would have gone, crash because you would have had you really run in a wall, and suddenly you're sick like a dog with a cold because your immune system is so reduced. All those
Yeah.
kind of things, they have no longer happened. So I think one of the things that we have not talked about, maybe a bit talked about in gratitude, is to actually stop and celebrate a win. We are so good in beating ourselves up. Oh my God, I'm so bad because I made that mistake. Or 40 years ago, I spoke negatively to that girl. Oh, look how bad I am. You're not seeing the positive. And I've made certainly over the last year, I've actively written down win lists, or instead of to-do lists, I sort of, or I maybe make a to-do list and then I write win next to it. Little win for a little achievement. Big win when I conquered something emotional or when I conquered something that in the past would have run away from. So we actually should stop and celebrate our wins. And that comes into the gratitude. Actually
Hmm.
pat yourself on the back. Love yourself. Show yourself the respect that you deserve. Because if you can't show yourself the respect, how do you want anyone else to do that? And the same with love. So we have got the power to change our perception of the world, our perception of us. We have got a
Yeah.
power to be different. We have got a power to become better humans. And I think this is wonderful. This is such a hopeful fact that it actually now leaves me. I mean, I've loved this interview because we have touched on some very basic things, but that has solidified, that has strengthened my base from which I can work with. This
Yeah.
has grounded me to actually say, wow, okay, yep, there's so much I can do today to make me a better version of myself, which is absolutely amazing, absolutely fantastic. So this is great. This is fantastic. Andrew, you're an amazing man. Thank you so much for being a guest on my show. Um, I had an amazing, amazing time. Tell me, where can people find you?
Well, I want to first thank you for having me on this show. And it's been an honor to be here.
Yeah,
Every opportunity I get to share this stuff, it just it fuels me because like I know that when we are able when we incorporate this stuff into our lives, like
yeah,
we're not going to get to burnout. And when we don't get to burnout, all of the different positive things that we talked about today happen in our lives.
uh,
And if we can keep doing this and uplifting the world in that way, like that to me is literally everything. So thank you for giving me this opportunity, and it's been a pleasure to be here. Where you can find me is on my website, which is www.themindblowingcoach.com. And in there, if you wanted to grab a free download of these 10 domains, you can absolutely do that. There's a little PDF there that highlights these 10 and with a not it's not heavy, but it's a high level science in connection with each of the domains. You can grab that free resource for you. And you can also, if you're interested in booking a free stress relief strategy call with me to see how we might be able to partner together,
Yeah.
feel free to do that too. That's all on the website.
Beautiful, beautiful. And guys, look down there into the description of the YouTube video and of the podcast because Andrew's details are all down there. Andrew, you're an amazing man. And we are all developing, we are all growing. So, what is your vision for yourself? Who do you want to be when you grow up?
Who do I want to be when I grow up?
Yeah.
I I want to be living in a place where this is not a thing anymore. I want to be out of a job. I want to be out of a job. I want all of us to be mastering our nervous system um,
Which of course
in,
is amazing. Yeah.
in these ways, right? Like that that's who I want to be. I want to be in addition to that, in addition to seeing a world without burnout, I I want to just keep learning. I want to keep growing. I want
Absolutely.
to um and one of the ways that I do that is traveling the world and meeting new people and immersing myself in different cultures because I just feel
Mm.
like that's the way for me to get myself
Yeah.
outside my own comfort
Yeah.
zone and keep like unlearning stuff and then learning stuff like um yeah, it's just that constant learning, that constant growth and mastering these 10, right? Because I'm still this is all a work in progress and I want to be able to get to a space where I'm fully mastering and I could do it with my eyes closed. And yeah,
I love it.
I
I
could
love it.
I keep talking about that answer, but thanks for asking it.
Oh no, no, it's wonderful because we all are growing. And I think you have highlighted some of those things where I've got the opportunity to work on things, where I can prioritize. And I think that is really good. I think the connection and the joy are those things that I have not yet put the deserved amount of time and effort in. And I
Yeah,
think I can grow because that are now the low-hanging fruit for me. I
yeah,
have mastered quite a lot of the others, but there is still, you have highlighted things that where I can be more effective in growing, and that is cool. So again, connection, the two of us chatting, being honest, being humble, being open with each other, that is how we grow. And I invite you all out there, do the same, have meaningful connections, have meaningful conversations, conversations that matter around the dinner table. Not just how are you and already thinking about what do I want to watch later, but actually ask, hey, how was your day? Stop talking and listen. Would that
yeah.
not be an amazing time? Andrew, you're an
Mhm.
amazing man. Thank you so much for a very inspiring interview. I loved it. Thank you so
Thank you so
much.
much again. Yeah.
And you guys out there, look after yourself and live with intention. Bye.